Hi there, Greg Swann. I haven't spoken to you for a while, and I apologize for that. I've been involved in other projects, but I figured I could make it up to you just by talking about some really hot sex. The most recent movie I made in this series discussed the idea of women as walking porn. And my advice to the women who watch that movie, my advice to married women generally, is to take advantage of the fact that you are so visually enthralling to your husband and give him more of what he's fighting for. The other movie in this series that I would cite would be the very first one that I made, in which we talked about the miraculous results to be achieved from a certain finger exercise that I call the come hither salute. And all of this I kind of relate to some ideas that I discussed in a book that I finished earlier this year called Father's Day. More husband, more married, more father, more man. The book is about how to do a better job of being a father so that your family is happier and more secure, and frankly, so that your sex life with your spouse is infinitely better. But one of the ideas that's talked about in that book is the subject of looking like a man in charge. And you look like a man in charge in all sorts of different ways, mainly just by having a plan, by knowing what it is that you want done and knowing how you intend to go about doing it. Ideally, delegating as much as you can to other people who are involved in the process. But the man in charge is the man with the plan. He's the man who's gonna get the job done. And when a man looks like that to his woman, oh my God, what he sees when he sees her at her sexiest is maybe a swimsuit model or maybe a centerfold model, the naked pulchritudinous feminine ideal. What she sees when she sees him at his most enthralling is a man in charge, a man with a plan, a man who is going to get the job done, a man who is going to take care of business. And approaching your bedroom festivities in that same way will have hugely salutary results in your marriage. If you look like a man with a plan, if you look like a man in charge, you're going to look very sexually exciting to her. I wrote an essay in August of 2012 for freetheanimal.com called 50 Shades of Bleak. And it was about the phenomenon of the book 50 Shades of Grey and what I saw as a really bad bargaining strategy on the part of women with respect to their incredible sexual market value, their ability to withhold sex until the appropriate price in emotional intimacy has been met is this is what makes horse races, as we say. This is what makes the world go round. That the progress of civilization for all of human history has been a result of men competing for women. Not to say that women haven't done remarkable things, because they have, but the overwhelming majority of remarkable things, and the very most remarkable things, both good and bad, mind you, are done by men, and they're done because men are always competing for women. The competition for mates is what mammals do. This is the nature of being a mammal, is to compete continuously for mates. We have a thinking brain, and therefore we can override these natural impulses, but they're never not there. And the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon was very interesting to me because it is a signal representation of the failure of women to understand their sexual market value, in the sense that the 50 Shades of Grey type of woman imagines that she is going to be most attractive to her man by being most degraded and most humiliated by him. I have a tremendous respect for the ideas of dominance and submission in sex, and we're going to talk about them, but the ideas of bondage, discipline, striking, injury, pain, humiliation, degradation, soiling, ugliness, misery, squalor. To associate those things with lovemaking strikes me as being absurd, being insane. That lovemaking is the sacrament of your marriage. It is the closest thing that you can achieve in actual human life to the ideas implied by holiness. That whatever religious people, whatever theologians mean by the word holy, they mean something apart from normal human existence, something that is exists in a realm that is not in evidence, which to me argues that it doesn't exist at all. But there is an experience of holiness, and that experience comes about when you are truly making love, when you are deeply, enduringly in love with your spouse. And you make love that way. You make love as the expression of that deep emotion that you feel. That is a sacrament, and to do anything to soil that in any way at all strikes me as being insane. But to soil the lovemaking act with pain, with degradation, with humiliation, with anger or spite or malice or violence, this is insane. This is not a part of a healthy, normal marriage, in my opinion. Your mileage may vary. But what I think is interesting about the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon is that women submitting themselves to this degradation, they have the idea that that's going to improve their relationship. But what it really boils down to is imagining that a normal, healthy, self-responsible, self-adoring man would want to turn his wife into a macrame project. That his way of expressing his own sexual ardor will consist of tying knots incessantly for hours on end. I mean, this is absurd. This is insane. Well-loved women are amazing women. They're remarkable women. But unloved women, after a while, are completely nuts. And the idea that any healthy, normal man would want to express his sexuality by engaging in some kind of a knitting project is absurd, is insane. But the other end of this is there is an enormous amount of satisfaction to be had in your marriage in the form of a voluntary submission on her part and a voluntary dominance on his part, aimed not toward humiliation or degradation or pain or imprisonment or violence or anything at all like that, but aimed at a deeper bondage, each of you to each other, a deeper binding together, a deeper and more enduring love that comes about by expressing your love in a way that makes sense to all three of the brains that you have in your skull. For reptiles, sex and domination are essentially the same thing, that a reptile is constantly on guard against any sort of risk or peril, except when engaged in the sex act, at which time all caution is thrown to the wind. The only time that a reptile is really at risk from predators or any other sort of damage is when that reptile is having sex. And at that point, everything is of secondary importance to that mating act. For mammals, the Susan Brown Miller, all men are rapists, this is a deeply disturbingly stupid premise, and we'll come back to it. But for mammals, mating and reproduction are coterminous with rape. They are the same set. A mammal, many birds, most birds, many other types of organisms, the female repels the male with everything she has within her. Every defense that she has, she brings to bear to repel all suitors who come at her. And the one she finally relents to is the one she can't get rid of, the one she can't beat off one way or another, or escape or run away from, the one who ultimately captures her egg or eggs is the one who completely captures her. And the penetrative act for that kind of organism, for big organisms of all kinds, the penetrative act is the culmination of a successful act of rape. And it's interesting in mammals, the way that the female resists until she doesn't resist. And as soon as she doesn't resist, then she gives over completely. And she completely surrenders, she completely submits to the reproductive act, to the mating act. Human beings have to understand lovemaking conceptually also, and so the kind of lovemaking that we're talking about is something that you really do have to talk about in advance and negotiate in advance and understand completely. Both of you understand what it is that you're getting involved in, but what you're looking for is for her to understand that she not only has the right to swoon in your marriage, this is discussed in Father's Day also, the female's right to swoon. The female has a right to swoon and the male does not. And it doesn't matter what you think about that. If you rebel against that and decide it's totally not fair, why don't I get the right to swoon? It doesn't make any difference because this is the way we are made. In the nature of our nature as organisms, as mammals, the female has the right to swoon. The female human being has the right to swoon in lovemaking, and the male does not. The female human being has the right to swoon in every circumstance, and the male human being does not. This is what it means to be married for a man, is to be the man in charge when nobody else can be in charge. But this is maybe less than enthralling when you're thinking about defending the home against burglars or engaging in warfare, but it is completely enthralling in the bedroom because when she swoons, the sex will be that much better for him also. And that's why we want to consider this at all. That in contrast to the 50 Shades of Bleak style of woman, the woman who is going to surrender all of her dignity in the hopes of attracting her man, and you should stop to think about that for a minute, that he sees himself repeatedly treating you like shit. How does he see you the rest of the time? If he sees you like shit when you are most intimate together, then how is he going to see you all the rest of the time? It is absurd to imagine that you could sustain relationships based on expressions of contempt, expressions of squalor. It is absurd to think that you could maintain that relationship, that this would be in any way beneficial for your relationship. But the opposite way of thinking, to think in terms of what Charlie Rich was singing about in the song Behind Closed Doors, what Mrs. Ari represents to Ari Gold in Entourage, a woman who is every inch a lady in public. That any time someone sees your wife, they see a lady, they see a woman of extreme dignity who is completely devoted to her man, completely faithful to her man, and really is an exemplar to all other women for how a dignified woman should comport herself. And yet, behind closed doors, she is a thoroughly sexual woman, and she knows why it is vitally important to let her husband take charge of their lovemaking, why it is vitally important for her to trust him enough that she is able to swoon, and why, when she lets herself swoon, she puts that swagger in her step that everyone sees. They recognize it as the confidence of a fully competent, well-loved woman, but she's well-loved because she's well-fucked. And she's well-fucked because she's committed to being a lady at all times, including in the bedroom. And if you see her that way, as an incredibly beautiful, ultimately dignified, very sexual woman, then everything will be that much better for you too. That to think that there would be something sexually exciting about someone that you humiliate or degrade, that doesn't make any sense to me. But the idea of finding a sexual excitement in someone that you exalt and praise and celebrate and fantasize about at all times, that makes complete and perfect sense to me. So if she's Mrs. Ari and you're married to Mrs. Ari, then you're going to have a very happy love life, and you'll be the envy of everyone you know. The swooning that she might undertake in your lovemaking is going to come about from her submission. And she's going to indulge in that submission because of his dominance, that he is going to assert that dominance, and in asserting it, he is going to communicate to her that she not only is free to submit, but that she should submit, that she should simply hop on the back of that motorcycle and let him drive. And the motorcycle is a wonderful metaphor because a motorcycle is the world's biggest vibrator. I have no idea how women drive motorcycles. You do occasionally see a woman driving a motorcycle, and I have no idea how they do it because a motorcycle is a giant vibrator. It's like an Hitachi magic wand scaled up to Oriental erotic drawing size. It is a Hitachi magic wand scaled up to the size of a fire hydrant, and she gets to slide onto that fire hydrant from behind. And what you should do, what a woman should do in that circumstance when the lovemaking starts, if there are things that she wants to do, she should do them. But he should be a man in charge. He should be a man with a plan. And if she wants to, she should just hop on the back of that motorcycle and ride. And let him drive her where they both want to go. And if she does this, the sex will be amazingly better for her. The lovemaking will be amazingly better for her, but it will be amazingly better for him too, because this is appropriate to our sex roles. This is appropriate to what we are as organisms, regardless of any ideas that we have on the subject. And so when she submits to him and when he dominates her, not violently dominates, but dominates just in the way that he controls her body and the way that she submits to his control of her body, when he dominates her and she dominates him in that way, they are making love in a way that both of their reptile brains will understand completely. That will make perfect sense to the reptile brain for both of them, because this is the way that male and female reptiles mate. And it will make perfect sense to their mammal brains, because he will be engaging in behaviors that will look to his mammal brain like that kind of rapine sex that all mammals engage in, and her body will be constrained, restrained by him in such a way that it will look to her mammal brain like she is being raped, as is completely appropriate for a mammal. And both of them will understand in their thinking brains, understand in fully conscious abstract knowledge, that they are engaged in this dominance and submission in pursuit of a greater intimacy, a greater depth to their lovemaking, a greater sexual ecstasy. And it works. It works. The fact is, he drives all the time in their marriage to the extent that it's working, and he should be driving in the bedroom in exactly that same way. He should be driving in the bedroom in that way as a symbol for the way that he's driving in every other part of their marriage. And if he does assert that kind of dominance, and if she does recognize the benefit to her and to them, to their usness, to the usness of their marriage, of her submitting to that dominance, then the lovemaking that they will have together will be unbelievable, unbelievably scalding, unbelievably hot. This is the scalding cauldron of hyper-dominant lovemaking. I will give you one little example of this. I can think of a whole lot of ways of doing this, and if you just imagine how a man looks when he is sexually dominant over a woman and express those kind of poses while you're making love, you will get this. It'll come to you very easily that the pure missionary position is very dominant in the sense that she has no chance of escaping, but if you hook your shoulders underneath her knees, now she's substantially less able to escape, and that's substantially more dominant. And not only that, at that point you can push her body around a lot more, which will also be more enthralling to her. The more that you can throw her around, and not to the point of causing her pain, but just to let her know that you are literally manhandling her, the more exciting that she's going to find it. That same position, you went from the missionary position to hooking your elbows and then ultimately your shoulders underneath her knees, underneath her calves, in order to drive her legs way, way back, and she is splayed wide open to you. And now you can lean forward and throw your hands underneath her shoulder blades and pull her forward that way, and you could literally pick her up if you're strong enough, if she's light enough. But even if you can't, you can rock her in that position she has absolutely no possibility of escape. Her mammal brain will know, her reptile brain will know that she has no possibility of escape, and the restraint that she feels and the sort of rapine surrender that she feels in that position will be very much more enthralling to her and to you, because you will feel the same thing. You will feel this enormous power that comes from having this incredible control over her body. But here's the example that I was thinking of, and it's just a way of thinking about this and putting it into practice. We talk all the time about fellatio. Fellatio is a Roman word. It means cocksucking. The Romans had another word, a much more important word. The word is irimatio. Irimatio means mouth-fucking. And if you want to know the difference between cocksucking and mouth-fucking, what you need to do is figure out what his hips are doing. Because if he's thrusting, that's irimatio. He's mouth-fucking. If his hands are on your ears or dug into your hair or behind your neck, if he's pulling you toward him, that's irimatio, that's mouth-fucking. And you will find, if you explore the way that each one of you experience these two sex acts, you will discover that the irimatio is much more exciting to both of you, because it involves the male dominance. It's the dominance, the seizure of control by the man, and it is the surrender of control by the woman. That fellatio is not terribly controlling on the part of the woman. It is an inherently submissive act anyway. It is more controlling for the woman because she is surrounding him, as it were. She is enfolding and capturing him with her mouth. But as soon as he takes control, it will be more exciting for both of them, because it is at that point the penetrative act. It is not a suction in, but a thrusting in. It is the penetrative act. It is the act of male dominance, the act of sex. And that difference, the difference between irimatio and fellatio, is the difference that we're talking about here, the kind of dominance that you're trying to express. The idea is not to cause pain. You can use little things. I have 2 spatulas in my nightstand, little things to put some sting on things, but sting is like hot sauce. You put a little bit of hot sauce on your taco and it tastes better. If you eat a hot sauce taco, it will taste terrible. You're not trying to cause pain. You're not trying to hurt her or leave whelps or marks. You're trying to excite her even more. And that's where a little hot sauce comes into play. But a little goes a long, long way, and in the meanwhile, the simple acts of dominance that you undertake, that literally dominating her, taking control of her body and making it plain to her that you are taking responsibility for the lovemaking, that you are taking responsibility for her orgasms, and you're going to give her as many as she can stand, that you are going to give her more and better orgasms than she could ever achieve on her own. And you're going to take responsibility for your own orgasm. And frankly, the things that you will be doing to express your sexual dominance over her will be so enthralling for you that by the time you do spray your seed, you will be a geyser. You will spray the whole room. And I think this is what you should be looking for when you're making love. I'm appalled at the idea of ugliness or humiliation or degradation or pain or violence in sex, but at the same time, I think the whole idea of boring lovemaking or perfunctory lovemaking or rote lovemaking or any sort of habituated or routine lovemaking is silly. That the thing that you should be doing is looking to make a holy sacrament of the time that you spend naked together every time you can manage to get the job done. What could be wrong with that? What could be better than that? What could be cooler than that? Bless you. Thank you so much for your time and attention. You have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.